All right, good evening all. As we are discussing, we are talking about confined space entering procedures, the hazards and risk associated with work in the confined space. And subsequently, we'll look at the control measures that should be in place before confined space entry activities classified as safe. All right, so we said that for a workplace or for that particular opening to be considered as a confined space, that is going to meet three basic criteria. First one is that the is large enough to accommodate people to work inside it. And the second criteria is that it will need to have a limited opening for entry and exit. Also, that the place is not designed for continuous occupancy, means that people cannot stay there for a long time. So if these three criteria are met, then we classify it as a confined space. Now we looked at a diagram through which we can decide if the confined space is permit required or non-permit required. Okay, so we say that if the three criteria that we discussed above is available, then it's a confined space. But if these three criteria are missing, then it's not a confined space. Okay, then we said also if these obvious hazards are available in that confined space, then it's permit required. Like if there is a hazardous atmosphere, there is hazard of engulfment, and there is a configuration hazard and other recognized hazard like fire or maybe drowning hazard. So if these obvious hazards are available, then it's permit required confined space. But if these hazards, through your risk assessment, you find out that they are not available, then you can classify them as non-permit required confined space. Also, we looked at openings or entry and exit of a confined space that is limited, so making it very difficult for self-contained breathing apparatus to enter inside, or making it difficult for life-saving equipment to go inside. So that is why confined space is a very hazardous activity and should be properly evaluated and risk assessed before allowing people to go inside there to work. Also, we've talked about ventilation. That ventilation is very essential for people to work. And in confined space, we find out that ventilation is very poor because there won't be possibility of cross ventilation, and because of the type of activity also going inside, which might make it impossible for ventilation to be adequate. Also, because of some dead matters, decomposed organic materials can also make it impossible for ventilation to be adequate in confined space. So we should put all these parameters into consideration while preparing risk assessment and before allowing people to work inside confined space. Now we talked about continuous occupancy of confined space. In continuous occupancy, it simply means that the confined space activity should not be an activity that takes a very long time. It should be an activity that should be completed in a short period of time, or if it's not completed in short time, there should be time for people to go out of the confined space and refresh and maybe come back again later. So confined space should not be, people should not stay inside the confined space for a long period of time. And that is why, because it's not designed to be occupied like that. So we also talked about the presence of hazardous substances in confined space, and we talked about the emergency rescue operation being very being very important. Before confined space activity starts, we should have a procedure in place to rescue people in case there's an emergency. Because so in case there's an emergency, we should have a rescue operation or rescue procedure in place to rescue people from inside the confined space. Now, we also looked at types of hazard in the confined space. We talked about oxygen deficiency, talked about oxygen-enriched environment, we talked about flammable atmospheres, toxic atmosphere, temperature, extreme temperatures like humidity or maybe cold also. Talked about engulfment hazards. Now, we are looking at oxygen levels inside the confined space. We said that the normal minimum acceptable oxygen level is 19.5%. And inside confined space, there's possibility of having either enriched oxygen environment or a deficient atmosphere in the confined space. Now, we are looking at when it's between 15 to 19%, there is decreased oxygen level in the confined space. Now, there's possibility of having impaired coordination. So the confusion can set in. If the oxygen level is between 12 to 14%, then the worker or the confined space entrant could start having poor judgment and also increase in respiration. If the oxygen level decreases further to between 10 to 12%, then there is possibility of increase in respiration and also lips bleed. If the oxygen level has decreased to 10%, between 8 and 10%, then there could be mental failure. The worker could faint, vomiting, nausea, unconsciousness. Between 6 to 8% of oxygen level in the confined space will lead to maybe death. The person could die, and the possible recovery percentage is just 50% if the person was rescued between 4 to 5 minutes. So if the oxygen level has reduced to between 4 to 6%, then the person could enter coma in the next 40 seconds. And if nothing is done, it's dead straight away. So this is simply to tell us the importance of measuring the oxygen level in the confined space. And one of the practical procedures that should be in place during confined space activity is continuous gas testing. Continuous gas testing in the sense that you don't just test the gas from the beginning and you leave it. You need to continuously test the gas in the confined space, because due to the depending on the activity going on, there's possibility of the oxygen level decreasing as the time goes by. And there's also possibility of the oxygen level increasing as the time goes by. So continuous monitoring of gas level in the confined space is very, very important. It's a practical control measure that will help to prevent any incident in the confined space. Very, very important. Then oxygen-enriched atmosphere simply means our normal oxygen level should be not more than 19.5%. But if the oxygen level has gone above 21%, then it's considered as an oxygen-enriched atmosphere, which that simply means is that just the smallest ignition source could trigger fire, and that is very hazardous. Where there is limited access and egress, if there is fire outbreak, then it's not easy for the entrants to escape or to be rescued. So we should continuously monitor oxygen level in the confined space to know if it's increasing or decreasing. So either is increasing or decreasing is not good also. All right, so we look at toxic environment or toxic atmospheres. So we looked at the types of activities that could cause the confined space to have a toxic atmosphere, like wedding activity, cutting, praising, soldering. These activities that involves emission of other types of gases. So this can make the environment toxic and can lead to other confined space incidents. Hydrogen sulfide is a type of gas or a type of hazardous substance in the confined space that is very, very hazardous. It originates from decomposition of materials or from human waste. So it has a rotten egg odor, and there is possibility of no warning at a high concentration. So how do we detect it and how do you take care of it? Continuous gas monitoring is very, very important. And gas monitoring before entry is very, very important so that you'll be able to detect the types of hazardous environment or hazardous substances available in that confined space before entry. Okay, carbon monoxide is a very odorless and colorless gas, and the effect can be rapid if not detected through gas testing. Because it's odorless and it's colorless, people can assume that carbon monoxide is not available, or people will neglect the presence of carbon monoxide. But through gas testing, can be able to detect presence of carbon monoxide in the confined space and take adequate measures to prevent incidents in the confined space. Okay, extreme temperatures like cold weather or hot weather are another type of hazard that is can be very hazardous inside the confined space. It's a very high risk in the sense that because of the activities going on and because of the location of the confined space, you might require additional protections to be free from the extreme weather condition. This would also trigger other conditions. For example, if the weather is too hot and you need to cool yourself down, then you can also get other types of illness in that process. So extreme weather temperature should be properly considered while working inside confined space so that the type of PPE required will be adequately provided before work in the confined space is authorized. Engulfment hazards. Just like excavations, the confined space could collapse, the walls of the confined space could collapse, or maybe the sands inside the confined space could engulf people. There could also be flooding, maybe through even sewage flow or water could be flowing inside the confined space. And these are the hazards that could cause engulfment. Noise or falling objects, maybe object falling from top if the confined space is below, could also be other risks associated with confined space. Okay, so these are a typical example of confined space. You see the inside, the internal view of this cylindrical chamber. So in most cases, it might not be as smooth as it appears from the outside, but the inside might be in layers, so making it quite difficult for people to enter and to exit when there is an emergency. So that is why adequate rescue planning and rescue operations should be planned before activity commences. All right. So testing the atmosphere, like I've said, is done in this order. It should be done before the activity starts, and it should be tested on the top, middle, and bottom. This is because some gases are lighter than air, so they might stay on top, whereas some other gases are the same level as the air, so they might stay at the middle, and other gases are heavier than air, and you find them at the bottom of the confined space. So testing only at the top, or maybe only at the bottom, will not give you the accurate reading you require. So you need to test the gas at the top, test at the middle as well, then test at the bottom of the confined space to be able to be sure that the environment or the atmosphere is free from hazardous gas. So ventilation first, everyone, when working in when there's an activity in the confined space, you should know that there should be you should provide a mechanism to take in air, to take in fresh air inside the confined space. This is very, very important, because in the confined space there is possibility of poor ventilation. So you should provide mechanism for forced ventilation, for forcing air inside the confined space, and continuous ventilation, and also continued testing. You need to test also to check the level of oxygen that is available, if it's adequate or if it's insufficient. So isolation simply means trying to put energy sources away, or removing the energy sources from where the people are working. So if there are electrical equipment or electrical apparatus located inside a confined space, it should be properly isolated before an activity is commenced inside a confined space. Also, if there are energy sources that maybe sends energy to inside the confined space, it should also be properly locked and isolated before entering inside the confined space is authorized. So respirators are essential while working inside the confined space, in the sense that it helps to filter dangerous substances from the air. It also helps to regulate the oxygen level that the worker breathes in. So if the oxygen level is too low, then it helps to improve it. If it's too high, then it helps to also reduce it, so that it will be regulated. Also, respirators will help to supply fresh air and not contaminated air. And respirators also should be well fitted, because you are using other PPE, so we should select respirators properly to ensure that it's well fitted with other PPEs. Permit to work system. For any activity inside the confined space, there should be a confined space supervisor. There should be presence of confined space supervisor. There should be presence of authorized gas tester. Authorized gas tester must be competent in testing gases, and there should also be presence of hole watcher. Hole watcher is someone that will be permanently located near the confined space entry or exit point, keeping record of people going in and out, and monitoring the situation inside the confined space, and receive the stress alert, or maybe warning signals when the people inside the confined space are in danger. So hole watcher is very, very important before the confined space activity. And these need to be confirmed before the permit to work is issued. Permit entry requirements, of course, it should be per location. You should not have a generic permit. You should not have a generic permit in the sense that you use one permit for multiple locations. No, for confined space, the permit should be specific to a particular location and the date. It's not the type of permit that is extendable to extend the permit to the next day or maybe to next shift. No, confined space permit should be per shift and should be closed after that particular shift. After confirming that all the entrants and the attendants and everyone is already out of the confined space and is safe to close the confined space. It's safe to close the permit. Okay, we talked about standby and rescue. So when the activity is going on inside the confined space, there should be a standby rescue team well equipped to rescue the workers in case anything goes wrong while the activity is going on. Okay, training. All the entrants must be properly trained. They should have the necessary information about the confined space. They should know the type of hazardous materials they are using. They should know what are the contents of the confined space, and they should be able to know what to do in case of emergency. So training is very important in every confined space activity. Okay, so because of time, this is where I will stop my presentation. Then I will give room for others to contribute. Okay, now we will take some contributions before we call it a day.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Johnson. Hello.
Good evening, Harrison. You are loud and
clear. Good evening, Mr. Johnson. It's been a while. I missed this house, honestly.
You are highly
James,
welcome.
good evening. Where is what's his name? I forgot his name now. Francis, yes. He's not here today.
Yeah, he's not yet.
I'm here.
Ah, I said he answered already. Good evening, Mr. Francis. Okay, I will be contributing a little. Honestly, you have said all you have said it all. Okay, there is nothing, not so much to add. Okay, but I will just give some points, okay, from my side, and I must tell you, it's going to be a repetition of what you have said, because all that needs to be said, you have said it. That is the truth. So, as per our own principle in my place of work, what we do, okay, we ensure that we identify every confined space that we have on the project, identify these confined spaces, then secure them, okay, from unauthorized entry, place a signage on it so that we can monitor this, okay? That's like a control measure. First, identify all of the confined spaces on the project, then secure them, place a warning sign and a permit require signage also on these areas that are classified as confined spaces. Then there must be a procedure in place, authorized and approved procedure in place for working in a confined space. So every activity that will be taking place in the confined space must follow as per that procedure. Okay, so on that procedure, there we have defined what is permit require confined space and a confined space that is not permit required. Okay, so if it's a permit required confined space, every steps that must be taken, action that must be taken to ensure that this activity is done safely will be followed as per that procedure that we have put in place. Okay, on that procedure, the legal requirement is there. Okay, the project specific requirement also is there on the procedure. Okay, for example, you have mentioned about the competency of the people. Yes, it is very important. The class of people that must be competent. When I mean competent, I mean they will be trained, okay, on this, on how to work in a confined space. It's called confined space entry, okay, for them to perform the job. The entrance, the workers who will be going to the confined space will definitely be trained by a third party. Okay, so they understand the nature of what the confined space is, the hazard that is in the confined space, and the control measure. Okay, they're able to work safely in the confined space. Then the hole washer also will be trained on how to be a competent hole washer. Okay, because he will check who is going to the confined space, that they are competent, and ensure that the attendance is taken. And when they are coming up from a confined space, also he also will check and take the attendance, and also be constant communication with those in the confined spaces. And also this guy is going to, this whole attendant, also if there's any issues in the confined space, he should be the one to communicate with the rescue team. Okay, that there is a problem. Okay, for the rescue to, he is not a rescuer. Okay, the rescue team, they are also different. So the entrance is going to be trained, they will be competent, the hole washer will be competent. Then, of course, the AGT, authorized gas tester, also will be competent. He has to go through training to know how to use the gas testing machine, to know how to test. Of course, I love the fact that you mentioned the structures of the confined space, the first layers, the middle, and the bottom, because the gases are of different weights. Okay, we have the H2S that is very heavier than air. Usually, it goes to the bottom of the confined space to settle. Right? So if you have your test only at the top, then you have missed it, because the H2S is down there. Anyone goes in there, it will become a very dangerous situation. Okay, so you must take from the top, middle, and bottom to check for whatever gases that are present there. Okay, it could be oxygen deficiency, it could be presence of H2S, it could be presence of carbon monoxide. You should be able to tell, and in what quantity that you have there, you should be able to tell. Then, of course, you have one other person that must be trained, the confined space supervisor. He or she also must pass through the training and be competent. Okay. Then, of course, we have one more, the rescue team. They also must be trained and competent. Okay. Then also there must be appropriate and adequate rescue equipment in place. Okay, and this equipment, preferably at the time of activity, should be located close to the confined space environment. Okay, confined space area, so that in case there is a need for this, they can easily be reached. Okay, then of course you have the communication, contact details, everything in the confined space area. Of course, your permit to work system, the permit is going to form a part of your safe work procedure. Okay. Then, of course, as per the risk assessment of the confined space, you should be able to tell if you are going to need the mechanical ventilation in case you don't have sufficient oxygen going in there. You're going to need mechanical ventilation. Okay, then you are going to check if you don't have adequate lighting, you are going to need additional lighting. Oftentimes we will be made to understand that you need what I call it, intrinsically lighting, a light with low heat that would not that could prevent explosion from, if the environment is explosion prone. Okay, so a whole lot we need to be put in place to ensure safe system of work in a confined space. You must risk assess confined space. You must know the kind of hazard that are present there. Then you must provide control solution or control measures that are in place. Are there electrical energies? Are there mechanical energies? Are there lines that need to be isolated? You must risk assess this and ensure that they are controlled before anyone will go into a confined space. And again, entering into a confined space doesn't necessarily mean when the full body goes in. No, if any part of the body goes into the confined space, it is regarded as entry, and that is prohibited. So you must conduct your your gas testing before going into a confined space as a rule of thumb. Okay, so that is my little contribution for the topic. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison, for that wonderful contribution. Okay, so though our time is far spent, we can take additional 1 or 2 contributions.
Okay, I will, in the absence of maybe nobody coming, I will just add one more thing. Okay, oftentimes we have multiple casualty in the confined space because we found people engaging in rescue activity even when they are not competent, they are not trained, because they want to help. They found themselves becoming a victim of the circumstances. Okay, so it is prohibited for people that are not trained rescuer to engage in rescue activity. If you are not trained rescuer, please do not go into a confined place to rescue your colleague or someone else. You must leave that for the trained and competent rescue personnel or team to carry out the activity. You could call for help, it's okay, that is welcome. But going into a confined space when you are not trained to rescue and you are going there to rescue, then it is risky. Thank you so much.
Yes, that is very well commended. Thank you very much for that wonderful contribution. Okay, is there someone else that wants to talk before we close for the day?
We'll see a lot today. I think we can close.
Okay, we have summarized
and
it.
The topic is interesting and is a critical topic that every well-detailed construction agency professional need to have in-depth knowledge, because no matter how the construction industry is less busy from the construction, oil and gas operating process, there must be confined space activity. In fact, it's more dangerous in the process area, irrespective of already the presence of carbon process already in the vessels or in the lines, but even in the construction activity as well. So confined space is a critical issue that before anyone goes inside, just as you said, and Harrison also said, we must do a double re-evaluation before any activity of its kind must take place. Training is a key. And for people to know, the procedure is also another key. The procedure, training, and those who will supervise the process must know the gravity of what is the kind of job, the scope of work, and all parties before going inside must also know all this process, so that then we talk about the rescue process. The rescue process is another major implementation that must be in place. Just as I said, all rescue material must be present. In fact, they must form part of the document before the activity commences. The emergency contact number, the radio process, the two-way radio communication from those in the supervisors to the rescue team to the medical team that must be involved in this process. All their contacts must form part of the rescue plan that will be attached to the PTW before the confined space activity is activated, so that every party will know their role if there is call for emergency. So this is my own little input.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis, as always. That was very powerful. So, guys, despite the hitches in the network today, we're able to communicate our points. And they, just like we always say, this is a motivation point that whatever we have discussed or whatever we reminded ourselves, the end point is to go and implement it in our workplace. So ensure that you are doing adequate, you are putting in place adequate control measures for every confined space activity. Don't take it for granted, because when the incident will strike, it will not ring bell. It will give you prior information. So we need to ensure that all measures are in place for every confined space activity before authorizing it. Don't just put your signature. I see some people signing permit in the office. Don't take such risk. Don't put your signature and authorize activities without doing due diligence and due verification. So that is it all from me today. So thank you all for coming, and do have a safe day, and ensure that you have a safe work place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
brother.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. James. Thank you, Chika, for coming. See you all later.